Hey there, I'm Dan. Um, I'm here to tell you today about a book project that I worked on. It's the Three Secrets to Relationship Happiness. I worked on it with my buddy Steve. We work on a project together called Relationship Champions. He's a couples counselor and a couples counselor educator and all these things, and I'm a wellness educator, and we kind of work together and put projects together to help people. So earlier this year, we were working through this one course that we have called the Five Secrets to Relationship Champions, which is essentially the basic things that all couples kind of need to be successful, like the things that all couples therapists say are important. Anyway, so I was working on creating a transcript of this and sharing it with people, and then as I started to edit it, he started to look at it, we went back and forth, and we had this idea that we'd make it into an ebook that we can share. Well, as he got started, he realized that it was actually a different story to be told. So essentially, Stephen told me that there are different folks, different types of relationships. 15 or 20% of people, they end up knowing how to do relationships well. All the rest of us, we got to figure it out, and it's not easy. And at the core of it, there's some basic concepts that people just misunderstand. And so we put that together in this book, and really the goal is how to be really happy in a long-term relationship. So, nevertheless, at that time, I was in a fairly new relationship, and that relationship's about a year on now, and I'm very happy using the things that we discuss in the book. I love my partner quite a lot, and she loves me, but she doesn't love reading, and she wanted to know what we were doing. So I decided I was going to read this book and then share it with you all. So here it goes. So here's a book, The Three Secrets of Relationship Happiness, written by my buddy Stephen Dromgold. You can get a copy of this paper if you want from Amazon, and you can also get a free copy from Google Publishing, and that'll just be an ebook. Or you can just sit and listen to me talk, that's fine too. Personally, I like having little copies to give away. Essentially, it's a 30-minute, 60-minute read when you're reading to yourself, so it's pretty quick, and it really just kind of gets to the point. Gives you a little bit of hope and some direction. Now, a word or two about my friend Steve. Stephen Dromgold is the director of Relate, which is New Zealand's largest couples specialist counseling agency. And he also then has his own form of therapy that he uses called presence-oriented relationship therapy. And it, again, takes the basic stuff, and he makes sure all couples counselors who work for him are able to jump directly into doing great couples counseling work. The Five Secrets course came out of that, and then this is the very first step of that. And so if you're a couple and you don't really know if you need couples counseling or if you don't really know there's still hope, I would encourage you either listen to me, get the paper copy, go to Google, and read it. It's free, and you might find something that's useful. And I know personally, when I was working on the editing of this at the beginning of the year, there were a couple things that came up that brought me to tears because I wish I knew some of the things that are in here. May have not made some of the mistakes I did, may have not held some of the resentments I did. So anyway, here's the book. Romeo and Juliet is seen as the ultimate romance story. 2 suicides, multiple murders, and families ripped apart. It's tragedy, not a love story. Love like then is confusing, advice is conflicting, and good help is costly. Let's talk about it. There's 3 Secrets of Relationship Happiness is written by Stephen in such a way that it's as if people are asking him questions and then he's answering it. So he's going to try to predict what you, the reader, is thinking, and then he'll go from there. So the first question, why did you write this book? When my marriage to my first wife was falling apart, I was a young therapist, aware of many resources. However, money was tight and I had no way of knowing what would help, so I opted for some cheaper choices which ultimately weren't helpful. After my divorce, I discovered tools that I now believe would have saved that relationship. In fact, I discovered that there is empirical research that is able to predict divorce in couples. I believe that everyone needs to know the key ideas that lead to relationship success. Many couples don't need therapy, they need good information. Our mission at Relationship Champions is to make the keys to relationship success accessible. The 3 Secrets to Relationship Happiness is meant to answer 3 questions. Why do so many relationships struggle? Why do you stop struggling? Or how do you stop struggling? What's the point of relationships? This book is an invitation to join the Relationship Champions community. It will describe our goals, mission, values, and give you a glimpse of our other resources. It will dispel a key myth that causes most couples to struggle. What is Relationship Champions about? Relationship Champions' purpose is to give couples in distress accurate, timely, research-based information that can help them stop fighting, communicate better, grow as individuals and as a couple, nurture lasting love, repair after trust breaches. Each secret addresses a key idea to help address these issues. Collectively, they will radically transform your relationship. Again, I'm Dan Gummo. I helped edit The 3 Secrets to Relationship Happiness, written by Stephen Dromgoole, and is formatted in such a way that there are questions to him. So the first question. Tell a little about yourself. My name is Stephen Dromgoole. I'm the clinical director at Relate New Zealand. I spent the last 25 years and more than 20,000 hours working with over 1,000 individuals and couples. I have a simple goal, and that's to make relationships awesome. I've trained around the world with the top gurus and have trained other therapists from Alaska to Invercargill, Qatar to the Blue Mountains in how to work effectively and compassionately with couples. Personally, I've been married, divorced, in the doghouse, and the honeypot. I've been frustrated and frustrating, betrayed and betraying. Every secret I'm giving you was hard-won because none of it came easily or naturally to me. Like many of you, I got married wanting to be in an amazing relationship full of love and laughter, great friendship, incredible sex, and deep connection. I wanted to create a safe place for our kids to grow up. My dream was to be that older couple whose children and grandchildren wanted to be like them. I remember 3 months after my marriage having this massive fight about something that seemed completely ridiculous. I remember thinking, what the heck happened? How did my marriage get so bad, so fast? Over the next 7 years, my first wife and I tried really hard. We tried a variety of different strategies, arguing more and harder, ignoring things, bargaining, making agreements, running parallel lives, going to therapy, yelling, spouting off to friends about how terrible our spouse was, having sex to smooth things, and not having sex to punish our partner. We were raising 2 little girls that we loved more than anything, and we were well aware of the stakes. However, no matter how hard we tried, nothing seemed to work. Our inability to fix our marriage led to what is still the worst moment of my life. When we came to sit down and tell my daughters that Mommy and Daddy couldn't live together in the same house anymore. I can't remember much of that day. I do remember the feeling that I had failed at the most important task in my life. Divorce is the pain that keeps on giving. Waking up in the house alone, missing bedtime stories, cuddles, birthday parties, and holidays alone. Like many people after my divorce, my understanding of what went wrong was pretty clear. It was obviously her problem. Unfortunately, in my rebound relationship, I soon discovered some pretty similar problems. When that ended, I realized that I had pretty bad luck, 2 dozen in a row. I'm kind of slow, but in my 3rd relationship, I started to realize there's more of a common denominator, me. This was the start of my recovery and growth journey. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. The Relationship Champions Secret series is the handbook written to the 32-year-old version of Stephen and every person who's losing hope in their relationship. If you are struggling in your relationships, I have 2 important messages for you. You are not alone. In fact, you have a lot of company. You do not have to stay this way. So what are the signs that you are in trouble or heading for it? Here are 8 signs that your relationship is likely in trouble. You persistently struggle or feel stuck in your relationship. You feel disappointed and dissatisfied in your relationship and wonder if you could do better. Your relationship is not getting better, safer, more intimate, despite life struggles. Your parents, or your partner's parents, relationship is an anti-model. You have been divorced or ended a serious long-term relationship before. There has been serious betrayal in the relationship. You persistently struggle to communicate in a way that works for both partners. Your relationship is generally good, but you're facing a big life transition, such as getting married, having a baby, or retiring. If this is you, then read on. If not, give this book to someone you know who is struggling. How did my relationship get to be in such a bad spot? Actually, it's no surprise that you struggle in relationships. There is a really scary statistic about relationships that most therapists will never tell you. This was discovered by the highly respected researcher Dr. John Gottman. Gottman's claim to fame is that he can watch a couple discuss a difficult issue for 15 minutes and predict with over 90% accuracy whether they will divorce in the next 5 years. Gottman also discovered that just 18% of couples fall in love and stay in love for life. I call these couples the naturals. Naturals generally have the following characteristics. Mom and dad are naturals too, so their internal models for relationships are great. Typically, there are no major childhood or adolescent traumas. Neither partner typically experienced significant financial distress while growing up. Both partners have strong cultural and community connections. So we're in the middle of a topic. The topic was, if you are struggling in your relationships, I have 2 important messages for you. The first message was, you are not alone. Now to the second one. The second piece of bad news is that if you are reading this, you're probably not a natural. Naturals tend to be fairly confused by the idea of couples therapy, because they already know and practice the relationship champion secrets unconsciously, and they're a little confused by people who don't get it. It's like someone who is not a gambling addict looking at someone who is and thinking, why don't you just stop? What they don't realize is that, like an addict, our relationship patterns are set up early for better or worse. If your family is good with food, money, sex, alcohol, and relationships, the odds are that you will unconsciously pick up some good habits. If they are not, then you will pick up some bad habits, but these can be changed, but it takes some work. So here's a pro tip. Naturals are really good for society because they are stable. They raise their kids responsibly, pay their taxes, and generally are nice people who make the world a better place. If you have friends who are naturals, hang out with them. It's good for your relationship. Now, here's the question. Clearly, I'm not a natural. What are my other options? There are 4 types of relationships. Besides naturals, the other 3 options. Number 2, the divorces, which are 50%. 3, the miserables, which are 16%. And last, relationship champions, which are just 16% of couples. So the divorcers were the biggest group in Gottman's study. This group included the married, who got divorced, and the unmarried, who simply separated. Bottom line, for a variety of reasons, the relationships got too hard and the couple parted. The scary thing about this group is that the statistics, my professional and personal experience, show that following divorce, the success rates of subsequent relationships tend to be quite low. The miserables are a smaller group and are the ones I feel the most sorry for. They're the couple who stay married forever, bickering, cranky and loveless, sexless. They're the couple you think twice about inviting for dinner because of the toxic interactions. Nancy Astor was reported to say to Winston Churchill, "If I wasn't fortunate enough to be married to you, I'd put poison in your tea." Churchill retorted, "If I was unfortunate enough to be married to you, I'd drink it." It turns out you needn't bother with the poison. There's a lot of really good research from a variety of reliable sources that indicates that being in a long-term bad relationship is more dangerous to your physical health than the combined effects of smoking, drinking, not exercising, junk food. On average, being in a long-term miserable relationship will kill you about 10 years earlier than expected. For me, this is a challenging reality when I work with couples who are stuck. I know that if they don't change, they're literally killing each other. Gottman actually found they could even predict the number of infectious illnesses partners would have in the following year based on the toxicity of the interactions. Relationship champions are the group I'm most interested in. This is a small group. Just 16% of Gottman's couples don't give up and don't settle. They often came from tough backgrounds. They often didn't have really great role models. They experienced trauma, loss, and pain. They did not get to see models of great relationships. Then they fought for it. They got down in the weeds and struggled and learned and tried and failed and tried again and again. In my world, relationship champions are real heroes. It's an honor to serve and learn with this incredible group of people. In fact, most of the gurus that I learned from are relationship champions. They found innovative solutions to their own personal challenges. The amazing thing about being a relationship champion is the outcome of your hard work becomes something you greatly value. When you have worked your way to an incredible relationship, You will cherish the relationship and feel lucky every day. You will know that your partner loved you enough to put up with you while you both worked through your way through to the happily ever after, which makes them incredible. You will know and be known at a deep level. You will have rock solid confidence in your ability to weather the storms and challenges of life, both individually and together. Stephen Dromgold's 6 realistic goals for every couple. Have a love that grows. Have kids that feel secure and loved and will go on to relationship success. Learn to communicate about difficult issues and get even closer together. Fall more in love with your partner as the years go on. Fill your relationship bank account. Live longer, healthier, and happier. Those goals sound great. So how do I become a relationship champion? Step 1. Focus on the problem, not your partner. With hindsight, it is crystal clear to me that although I said we struggled for nearly 7 years in my first marriage, it's more accurate that we repeated the same fight for 7 years, with varying levels of intensity. Finally, we had drained the relationship bank account of trust, respect, liking, and hope. We were locked in a struggle to be right rather than connected. All of our energy was going the wrong direction, against each other, then our problems. Focus your energy on the things that really matter. Step 2. Don't give up. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Being a relationship champion is hard work. Knowing the secrets will not save your marriage in and of itself. It's like having a map in the desert. You still need to walk out. You will get hot, tired, burnt, and discouraged at times. However, if you follow the map, you will make it through. So here's a side comment. But what if I'm in an abusive relationship? The fact is that some people are in relationships with terrible toxic people. I'm not saying stay in an abusive relationship. I'm saying don't give up on being a relationship champion. Relationship champions leave toxic relationships. They don't just leave toxic partners. The good news is that everything you learn to become a better partner will expose damaging relationship patterns and teach you the blueprint of what it takes to succeed. If your partner is toxic and unable to change, then you know it's time to run, not walk away. Okay, are you ready for the first secret? Now I need to tell you that the first secret has a couple of different aspects, which we are going to unpack one at a time. The myth makes people miserable. Secret 1. Relationships are not designed to make you happy. Okay. Before you throw this book across the room, take a deep breath. This is really good news. And you may think, yeah, right, this is the worst plot twist ever. I remember filming some video with this focus a few years ago. My older sister Kylie was filming, and when I said this, she wrinkled her nose in disgust and said, "Steve, no one's going to want to hear this." She was right. That video is still his least watched video. Unfortunately, this is the single most useful secret I know, and it trips up lots of relationship champions, divorcers, and miserables. This should not be a surprise. Imagine I told you that I knew the 3 steps to everlasting happiness. Step 1. Go to a bar and pick up a random stranger. Step 2. Agree to spend the next 50 years sleeping in the same bed, raising kids, sharing your money. There are 4 main reasons why this belief is prevalent. Reason 1, indoctrination. Since the 1960s, we have been indoctrinated in the romance narrative of the one. We tend to think of media, movies, TV, books, etc. as entertainment. In fact, they are education. I thought I was getting married to get sex, cooking, cleaning services, and companionship. You may notice that in the next few romance films you watch, that uncomfortable conversations, toilet scrubbing, and PMS do not figure highly in the script. This creates a really disillusioning reality mismatch, which leaves relationship champions, divorcers, and miserables feeling ripped off, angry, and discouraged. It tends not to impact naturals nearly as badly, because they have lots of reality-based experience to balance their indoctrination. They understand that romance is the dessert, not the meal itself. On a side note, I found Qatar an interesting case. A conservative, non-extremist, affluent country with stable leadership and an amazing social welfare system. Qatar is very similar economically to much of the West. However, Before the 2000s, Qatari TV was highly censored, and divorce rates were less than 100 couples a year. However, with the indoctrination of the internet and the access to Western media, the divorce rate skyrocketed very quickly to around 1,000 couples a year. Social commenters report issues of family interference and incompatibility. I disagree. Family interference in collectivist cultures is literally as old as time, but incompatibility sounds to me like you're not making me happy, which is not a big feature of collectivist thinking. It seems to me that this is a powerful illustration of the indoctrinating impacts of Western media, which promote individualistic, me first thinking, and romance as the reason, motivation, and enduring rationale for relationships, which the resulting relationship catastrophes. Reason 2, experience gaps. The next reason is that non-naturals typically have experience gaps. Naturals have seen a lifetime of their parents facing everyday challenges. They know that life is tough. Babies wake you up, toddlers wreck things, teenagers are hormonal boundary-pushing growth challenges. Steve said his wife said he couldn't call them pain in the asses. As children, we absorb the relationship examples we grew up with. If we are not naturals, we have trauma or disruption. We generally have gaps in the lived experience of what healthy relationships actually look like. So we fill in the gaps that we fill with idealizations, conveniently supplied from our cultural indoctrination. What this means is that the reality of our relationships does not match our idealizations. Parenting is stressful for everyone, but if you haven't seen it done well, including dealing with the normal challenges, it will feel much more overwhelming. It's like booking into a hotel for a vacation, but actually, it was a CrossFit boot camp. Between the shared bunk dorms, being woken at 6 for the morning run, and lots of burpees, we would be thinking this is the worst hotel ever. Naturals, by contrast, know that relationships don't make you happy. They expect to work at it. They expect some pain, some misunderstanding. Reason number 3, honeymoon drugs. And I have to say, this one was really powerful for me to hear. The next reason for this misapprehension lies in our physiology. What we call falling in love should be called falling in lust. Limerence, the technical term, is a powerful and brilliantly designed form of mate selection, which helps us find suitable partners. More on this later in another book. Literally, the experience of falling in love is biologically addictive and intoxicating. We are literally high on the same neurotransmitters triggered by cocaine. One particular neurotransmitter, phenethylamine, massively amplifies our obsessive interest in our partner and empathic engagement with our emotional state. If she is happy, I am so happy. If she is sad, I'm devastated. This means that I am very, very interested in caring for my partner because it makes me feel really good. So I'm loving my partner with all of my effort. I'm likely to try all the love languages, even the ones I don't normally use. For instance, your quiet, withdrawn avoider is going to become an engaged listener, taking risks, expressing emotions, initiating touch, taking opportunities for acts of care and service, and of course, making lots of opportunities for quality time. Or another example, your extroverted party animal is going to be focusing all their magnetism, charisma, and charm on just their partner. They will truly feel, maybe for the first time, that Reason number 4. Naturals do it. What is exceptionally confusing for relationship champions, divorcers, and miserables is that naturals fall in lust and then grow easily into love. Confusingly, many naturals believe that relationships should make you happy. I mean, they feel happy. Naturals also have the cumulative advantages of the other secrets working for them as well, which tends to make a smoother path for the relationship. So it is important for us wannabe relationship champions to recognize that happiness is actually possible. We just need to work for it. You may ask, okay, Stephen, why does it matter if I believe that the purpose of relationships is to make me happy? I'm so glad you asked. There are actually 2 massive problems. If you expect relationships to make you happy, you're doomed, and you will never escape misery. Let me explain. What do you mean by doomed? That's problem one. It crushes your spirit. I'm not trying to be dramatic here. I've sat with over 1,000 couples, and each story is uniquely personal and painful. But the common theme is that dreams have been crushed and hope is fading, or in some cases completely gone. Imagine using this pickup line. Hey gorgeous, I saw you from across the room, and you totally captivated me. I haven't been able to take my eyes off you all evening. I'd love to buy you a drink and cook you breakfast at my place. And if you think that someday I'll love another girl, of course I will. In 4 years, I'll love her totally, and she'll call you mommy. Then I'm going to start working more. We'll argue a lot and stop having sex. I'll stop noticing you and helping out with chores even. Then after about 6 more years of misery and bickering, we could go for couples therapy. Nobody wants that story. However, we will sign up for the happily ever after story. We fell in love, we had struggles. However, we got through it together. Now it's so much better. We know the worst of each other, and we still accept, love, and adore each other. We're each other's person. The key takeaway? Aiming solely for happy is totally unachievable and unrealistic no matter who you are. Totally unachievable? That sounds like an overstatement. Let me illustrate this simply. If I told you that I would immediately deposit $10 million into your account, and keep topping up your account every time you spend it, then I organized maids, cleaners, gardeners, and childcare, and then booked you on a 6-month, no expenses spared, world trip, and the only condition was that you would be happy all the time. Could you achieve that? Well, you might think to yourself, I'd like to try. Well, I hear that you say you'd like to try. The fact is that we have a lot of celebrity examples that illustrate that good health, wealth, beauty, and opportunity are not guarantees of happiness, and in fact can be catalysts for catastrophe. In fact, if you were happy all the time in the face of child abuse, terrorism, global warming, and paper cuts, you would have a serious mental health problem. As humans, we have a whole suite of emotions: happy, sad, scared, angry, curious, apprehensive, etc. Some emotions are easier to sit with than others, but fundamentally, it's not normal to stay stuck in one emotional state. While most of us prefer certain emotions, the fact is that humans are hard to live with. Expecting that relationships will not be challenging, but that it will be glorious all the time is a fairly delusional expectation. So here's your key takeaway. Dumping the expectation of perpetual happiness on our partner's shoulders is a costly and insane act of relationship sabotage. That does sound miserable and confusing. What do we do? That points right to the second problem. Trying to solve the happiness problem typically makes things worse. Couples in therapy commonly experience some ambivalence. On the one hand, they may want help. On the other hand, they seriously doubt there is anything that can be done. Actually, getting to this point is the beginning of the solution. Katie, a professional health worker, leaned back, shaking her head as she finished the story about her relationship with James. I know you are supposed to be really good at this and all, but seriously, I've tried everything. I know for the last 11 years and nothing has worked. I think it's hopeless. To be fair, Katie had worked really hard. She was raising a 3-year-old while working a high-stress, high-power job that included travel, while simultaneously supporting her serially underemployed and impulsive partner who did very little around the house. Katie is a hyper-confident and competent achiever. She was trying to solve her James problem with the approach that worked so well for her at work and had helped her claw her way out of dire childhood poverty. Work harder, push harder, and be more determined. James, by contrast, was trapped in a cycle of inferiority and overwhelmedness. Raised in affluence by a controlling and domineering mother, James was retreating to his childhood defense of learned helplessness and emotional withdrawal. Katie believed that if James would just get his act together, happiness was achievable. James believed that Katie would just stop trying to control him, then things would get better. The harder they worked their plans, the worse things got. It also turned out I was their 4th therapist. The first was a pastoral therapist who recommended that Katie pray more and confess her resentment. Katie resented this a lot and didn't go back. The second lasted a few weeks longer and recommended making behavioral contracts, which James managed for less than a week, providing more fodder for fighting resentment. Katie really liked the third therapist, who styled herself as a pro-feminist. Therapist number 3 confronted James about his entitled, patriarchal behavior. James refused to return for a second session. All these therapeutic interventions had their merits. Katie was incredibly resentful. Adult relationships are based on the ability to make and maintain relational agreements. James' behavior was incredibly entitled and supported by oppressive patriarchal norms. However, when both partners believe they are entitled to happiness, the reactions typically feel like the only possible response. How could Katie not be resentful? How could James not shut down and withdraw? What is required for us relationship champions, divorcers, and miserables is that we pop the perpetual happiness fantasy bubble. Were Katie and James able to become relationship champions? Let's look at how we started. Once they had finished telling me their story, I took a deep breath, smiled, and looked at both Katie and James and asked if I could give some feedback. They both nodded, looking very worried. I mean, after the story, what hope could there be? Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you guys really had this amazing falling in love connection. James, you're in awe of Katie, her drive, her determination, and just her passion for life. Oh, and you think she is freaking gorgeous. James nods and smiles, his eyes slightly damp. She still is. Katie rolls her eyes, and James freezes slightly. I stop a second and look at James. It's hard for her to hear you right now. She's pretty angry with you. We both look at Katie, who nods and relaxes slightly. And Katie, you thought James was so brilliant and creative. You loved his ability and willingness to try new things and his optimism. And the fact that he was not deterred by failure. Oh, and you thought he was pretty hot. Katie wiggles uncomfortably, and then just briefly, a look of total devastation passes across her face. James misses it. He's looking off into the middle distance. I imagine he's remembering how it felt. I know all that stuff may feel really far away right now. However, I imagine that James felt incredibly supported, empowered, and protected by Katie. Katie, I imagine that you felt really free being with James, the sense he totally believed in you, that you didn't have to be alone, and the sense of financial freedom and security. It opened new worlds to you. I imagine the world looked very bright to you both. They both nod and smile, rather sadly at each other as I continue. So then it started to slowly fall apart. James' impulsivity created hardships and financial loss for you both. This was amplified because James happily relied on the bank of Mom, and suddenly the denigration that went along with it. But it was triggering the survival threat for Katie. Katie, although you were no longer in danger of starving, you were working harder and harder to try and single-handedly ensure your financial independence as a couple. This meant you started reality checking and critiquing James' ideas with the forensic intensity of someone who knew how to skimp and save and do without. James, you were experiencing Katie as your personal dream burster, and in her questions and critiques you started to hear the criticisms and scorn of your mother's voice saying, "You'll never amount to anything," so you responded with your old pattern of withdrawing, sulking, and being secretive and impulsive. This created emotional distance, a series of trust breaches that left Katie hypervigilant and super pissed, while you, James, felt ashamed, inadequate, and worthless. Obviously, at this point, sex, passion, intimacy, and fun are out the window. So the fact that you guys lasted this long suggests that you are pretty determined, love your daughter, and there has to be a real connection under this mess. Does that sound right? At this point, both Katie and James are nodding vigorously, to the point where they're laughing and have tears in their eyes. So it may be obvious how I popped the happiness bubble. I did it by explaining where Katie and James' relationship started and how they got to this miserable impasse. The fact that their situation makes sense, and it was driven by a whole lot of longings and beliefs, I shift the conversation out of right and wrong based upon their happiness and into their human experience of struggle towards connection and learning how to live together. I acknowledge their strengths and hopes in the ways that they are interacting to create a toxic environment. Then I present the challenge of a new way to live. So James and Katie, at this point I have some good news and some bad news for you. Your relationship's totally salvageable if you want, but you need to work for it, pretty hard too. They take an anxious breath. After a moment, then when the gravity of the situation sinks in, I continue. James, you have learned to give away your power and your responsibility to the women in your life. A brilliant strategy as a child with a controlling mother. However, as an adult, it will leave Katie and any future partner feeling incredibly frustrated and unsupported. Your challenge is to both hold onto your creativity and also start taking a lot more responsibility. You need to create some stability, probably by just doing something that pays the bills until your brilliant ideas start paying their way. Katie, you're used to doing it yourself, protecting yourself and just working harder. You need to stop rowing James' side of the boat. He will either rise to the challenge or fail. I'm sorry to say that you can't rescue him or stop him from making mistakes because he is extremely unlikely to just get it right the first time. However, as long as he does his bit and goes to his boring job and pays the bills he needs to, then he can practice being brilliant and creative and crashing and burning until he can finally succeed. James gets to do so with a wife who still loves him and has seen him really earn his wings. The beauty of this approach is that this journey will help you both heal from your wounds. James, you can learn that you can be competent, powerful, consistent, and creative. You'll receive the respect you deserve from being like that. Katie, you will learn to trust, to relax, to play, and to be supportive and supported. James, this will help you heal from the wounds of being shamed and belittled, and the bonus is that you get to have a supporter beside you. Katie, you get to heal from your childhood neglect and abandonment, and you get to be with someone who will help you feel supported and relax and play. How does this sound? Are you up for the challenge? So you can see here how I frame their challenge. The relationship can heal and become amazing as a natural outcome of loving, caring, and responsible action. I'm teaching them to approach relationships in the way that naturals do. So secret number 2, loving, not relationship, makes you happy. Understanding the secret and focusing on loving instead of happiness will transform your life as well as your relationship. The reality is this: happiness is a byproduct of living in sync with your values. So, what happens when I focus on loving? When we start focusing on loving our partner, well, we start to experience 3 powerful benefits. Benefit 1. Doing good feels good. The reason you are reading this book is because having a good relationship matters to you. So, obviously, when we act in a way that is aligned with our values, then it's going to feel good, even if it is really challenging. So waking, yet again, to soothe and change your sick child is obviously challenging, but it feels a lot better than being prevented from responding to your child's pain. So even if your relationship is truly horrible right now, if your value is to restore it, then working in that direction is intrinsically satisfying, even when it's hard. By contrast, getting angry, being snide, punishing, or withdrawing from your partner when they are being a pain in the ass may feel temporarily satisfying. However, this behavior feels bad because it's ultimately against your own values. Benefit number 2. When we are nice to our partner, they are often nice to us. There are always exceptional people in situations that go against the rule, but on balance, when we are nice to people, they're normally nicer back. Maybe not exactly the way we want them to be. Sometimes them being nice is holding back criticism or putting out the rubbish without complaint. It may not be roses and poetry. However, on balance, being nice to your partner does not normally make them worse overall. If it does, book a therapy session. Side note, what if things get worse when I'm nice to my partner? If you feel like your partner is getting worse when you are actually being nicer, there are 3 likely causes. You have no idea what being nice means to them. 2, they are a toxic person who sees kindness as a form of weakness and an invitation to take advantage. 1 or both of you are so angry, bitter, and resentful that neither of you can actually send or receive kindness in a non-contaminated way. All 3 of these situations indicate that a therapist may be useful to give you an external set of eyes. Benefit number 3. Loving your partner is a form of self-care. What? Loving is self-care? Yep, it's true. I'll explain the details more in another book, but suffice it to say that part of the weird alchemy of bonding, attachment, and connection is that whatever we do to someone we are bonded to, our brain receives it as if it happened to us. Imagine this. It's Christmas or Hanukkah or another big festival in your family with special food and presents, etc. Now imagine a child you love who's about 5 or 6. They are bouncing with excitement. How does this feel in your body as you remember it or imagine it? Are you smiling? Do you feel warm and light? Of course you do. This process is called positive symbiotic emotional fusion and is one of the really cool things that makes us deeply and fully human. This is why good relationships are so important, and bad relationships will literally kill us. Those warm, fuzzy feelings are caused by hormones and neurotransmitters that relax and heal your body, help you focus, free your mind for creativity and play. These feelings are the key to the good life. The cold pricklies are caused by hormones and neurotransmitters designed to protect us from the life-threatening situations and threats. They let us run with a broken leg when chased by a tiger. We are not supposed to live like this in the long term. It literally eats our brain, damages our hearts, disrupts our sleep, and sends our pain levels through the roof. When we're loving our partner, we receive these benefits with one proviso. Okay, so what's the third secret? The third secret is we have to choose love to get the third benefit. If you act loving only because you have to, not because you choose to, then you are effectively a slave or martyr. You lose the symbiotic advantages. You just get resentful and bitter. When my daughter wakes in tears and terror, and I wake up yet again and stumble sleepily towards her and pick her up, if my internal dialogue is, "Oh my God, that little brat's at it again. I guess I have to get her because it's my job," I'm going to feel resentful and frustrated. However, if I connect to my longing to be a great dad, my dialogue may be more like, "So sleepy. I can't believe she woke again. Okay, let's see if I can get her settled." Then I pick her up, see her in distress, and my heart just opens to her. "Hey, darling, Daddy is here. It's okay." And I gently rock her and stroke her back. Lovingly, I talk to her and feel her tension drain away until she falls asleep in my arms. By this time, I'm totally relaxed myself, still sleepy, but a little in awe of the amazing responsibility and opportunity to nurture this little life. In fact, there is another benefit. I don't just feel good about myself. Amazingly, internally, I am developing stronger internal resilience. Essentially, the view that I am a powerful and competent and able to hold my own hand in times of stress. This process of developing your own internal self-nurturer gives us the resilience to cope with life's vicissitudes with a sense of optimism. Okay, so this sounds great, but a little fluffy. Is there any actual evidence to back this up? I'm so glad you asked. Let's go back to Gottman, the divorce predictor. Gottman's most famous research emerged from discussions with a buddy and colleague of his named Bob Levinson, as they tried to solve the age-old problem, what do women want? A little backstory may be in order here. Gottman is a Yale-trained mathematician. In the late 1970s, he was working at the University of Washington's psychology department and was having relationship problems. He was good friends with another researcher named Robert Levinson, and the two were apparently complaining about the relationship problems, and like good academics and psychologists, they decided to design some experiments. Their goal was to find out why some people have great relationships and other people have terrible relationships. They set up an apartment at the University of Washington. They wired the apartment for sound and video. They invited couples to come and stay at the apartment and the Love Lab for the weekend. They didn't do any intervention. Gottman simply filmed the couples. The only instructions were just have a normal weekend, read the paper, watch television, and order a pizza. Just forget the cameras are rolling, and after the weekend, Gottman sent the couples on their way. Gottman followed up 5 or 6 years later to find out which couples were still together and which couples had separated. Then, with the benefit of knowing which couples were successful, they analyzed hundreds of variables and ran a series of computer analyses. They determined the key indicators that would let you know whether this relationship was going to last, and also the couple's happiness levels. This was a revolution in relationship therapy. Gottman's approach was completely different from what therapists did at the time. Most therapists through the 1970s developed a theory or an idea about how to help couples, and based on their experience and personal preferences. The therapists tested their theory out on their clients. The therapist who hates yelling would develop a theory to get couples to stop yelling. This makes sense to the therapist, who thinks that because they always feel terrible when they're in a conflict situation, they must be improving their clients' relationships. E equals MC, she's mad. Here's the skinny. Some interactions are positive, showing interest, affection, appreciation, acceptance, humor, genuine apologies, validation, and showing that the partner matters. Others are negative, dismissal, eye rolls, criticism, defensiveness. Imagine that you and your partner are in a difficult conversation. If you are a natural, you do 5 positive interactions for every negative, and so you have a good relationship. If you're a divorcer, you do 6 negatives for every 5 positives. If you want to be a miserable, you do 6 positives for every 5 negatives. What's the everyday ratio in your relationship? Naturals and relationship champions have a ratio of 20 positives for every negative. What does a relationship with so many positives look like in real life? Naturals and relationship champions wake up, smile at their partner, stroke their face gently, and snuggle together for a few minutes of cuddles. They ask, "How did you sleep?" They listen attentively and respond in a gently attuned way. Both partners feel relaxed. When the baby starts crying, they both groan and one offers, "I'll get Bubs and fix her bottle." "Thanks, hun," is the response. "Want a coffee?" "Oh God, please, thank you." This relationship is beautiful. There are so many positive emotional credits going into the relationship bank account. What about when there are more negative behaviors? Miserables and divorcers wake up, feel alone, still grumpy and out of sorts from the fight last night. They roll out of bed, and in the process flicking the bed cover, which leaves their partner's back exposed and cold as they lurch up from the bed. Their partner's cold, confused, and wake up in time to hear their partner fart loudly as they exit the room scratching their butt. Can you hear the bank account draining? How do I change this pattern? Awareness is the first step. Relationship champions consistently make intentional choices to invest in the relationship bank account. They have a solid commitment to learn what they don't know, and over time they become increasingly skilled and effective at loving their partners well. If you need more specific details, the follow-up books in the series will give a deeper explanation. If you prefer demonstrations, then check out the 5 Secrets of Relationship Champions webinar series. So you're just saying work harder? No, absolutely not. Remember the fine print above. You can't just work harder. That turns us into resentful, self-righteous, exhausted martyrs. We need to choose to love our partners well. That means we work hard sometimes with a goal to love our partner well. That way we don't waste our effort on stuff that doesn't work. I remember in the first year of marriage I wrote my partner a poem, something I had done during our courtship. Now for me, this is a fairly natural way to express my love, as I come from a words family. However, my ex-wife is more of a service is love kind of person. So she took the poem and said, "That's nice, honey, but what I really appreciate is if you clean the bathroom." Now to me, that was a super weird request, but my goal was to show her love, so the next day I cleaned the bathroom. Cleaning took all of 20 minutes. The poem took over an hour. My wife was so happy about the bathroom. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I was able to work out the math. Cleaning the toilet generated massive emotional return into the relationship bank account with far less effort invested. Comparatively, the poem was a poor investment. The point. Because the goal is loving our partner, we work smarter, not harder. We teach you how listening with the whole brain will help us catch our partner's needs more effectively and communicate our own needs. This helps us help our partner win, but that's for another book. How do you summarize this secret in a few words? Loving well is the key to happiness. Additionally, loving our partner well is the key to a happy relationship. It makes us happier in general, gives us 10 more years of life, requires working smarter, not harder, builds emotional resiliency, means living in congruence with our own values, helps our partner feel nice, and it also feels good. The afterword. In early 2020, the coronavirus pandemic fundamentally altered society and has continued to create uncertainty and fear among people. Unfortunately, there is a prior unacknowledged pandemic. This pandemic is generally that of loneliness, disconnection, and solitude, with people seemingly becoming more self-centered every day. The profound isolation people experience has a tragic parallel in relationships. Steve and I became friends in 2018. We met at the Existential Humanistic Institute's experiential retreat, each of us searching for an antidote for disconnection. Our friendship was born out of a desire for community, vulnerability, and shared vision to build meaningful connection in ordinary life. Since 2018, Stephen has worked and reworked presence-oriented relationship therapy, or PORT. PORT was influenced by the retreat and is the original theory behind the series. One day during a Zoom call, Stephen told me that at the start of lockdown, my wife and I were due to be on holiday. We are flooded with stories of overwhelmed divorce courts, increases in domestic violence, and everyday parents trying to juggle jobs and children at the same time. Just being one person, Stephen decided to create an online resource to stem the flood. That was the beginning of Relationship Champions. Then, in 2021, Stephen invited me to help build this program. After a busy start, we are in a new year with a handful of resources and a new published book. There are other Relationship Champions projects in the works. Until then, let me invite you to join our community. That was my afterword, Daniel Gummo, and I'm the administrator, and you can contact me at dan@relationshipchampions.com. Appendix. Relationship Champions was created to give couples and individuals high-quality resources at the right time in an easy-to-understand format. We want to broadly increase the quality of relationships through online, digital, and print media. Stephen's work with Port has created a novel understanding of how a great relationship is created. Relationship Champions will be a forum for couples and counselors to connect and grow. Multiple layers of resources are available to both couples and counselors from Relationship Champions. Our first layer of free resources is on Facebook, YouTube, newsletters, and sometimes ebooks like this one, or on TikTok. Other couples begin relationship counseling. They typically receive a basic education about relationship patterns, communication, and strategies at the beginning of counseling. We have included this middle layer in low-cost online resources. Relationship Champions is offering online webinars 10 times cheaper than therapy appointments. This is the 5 Secrets of Relationship Champions. It's a companion piece to this book, a short, powerful resource which explains the basics of having a great relationship and contains demonstrations of the most important skills for every couple. The skills included in 5 Secrets are the basic skills of learning to be a relationship champion through increased positive interactions. Love in a Time of COVID was the original course that Stephen created and is for couples who need more intense help. With 55 videos and 20 hours of content, Stephen created a digital version of a 3-day relationship rescue intensive. These resources are priced so that any couple, regardless of their financial means, can have a chance. And upper layer resources are limited based upon Stephen's availability and may become unavailable. Please see our website for openings, relationshipchampions.com. Well, this is the last video. This is Stephen's bio. Stephen's desire is to empower couples with tools to communicate effectively so they can feel safe, loved, and desired. He is keen to work with couples preparing for marriage to help them avoid years of unnecessary pain and disappointment by building love well in the first place. Stephen is the founder and clinical director of Relate, New Zealand's largest specialist relationship and marriage therapy team. Stephen traveled around the world to train under experts including Harville Hendricks, John and Julia Gottman, Stan Tatkin, Maya Coleman, and Esther Perel. He has been actively involved in promoting and linking therapeutic and brain science insights to produce more powerful and integrated connection solutions. Stephen led the Relate team in developing Port. His collaboration with other passionate international clinicians led him to be a contributor in the HEART, which is Humanistic Existential Approach to Relationship Therapy, an evidence-based couples therapy training modality. So thanks for taking time and listening to this book with me. Again, my name is Dan, and I will be glad to answer any questions that you may have. Feel free to message me or email me at dan@relationshipchampions.com.